Let's go!
So, no training mode, pissing a lot of people off. Justifiably so, because there's a lot of mechanics in this game. But like I was saying earlier, at the same point, you're just not going to get many training modes out of the gate in most games nowadays. It's just not going to happen for betas, just because they want to avoid the crack issues. And that sort of set a precedent. So what is the fun part? The fun part is that the game itself is very fun. Doing all this stuff with some of these characters, I'm looking forward to the full roster and seeing how everybody sort of operates. It's enjoyable. It's very enjoyable. It's a cool game and a lot of variety, you know, more so than we've been able to explore now. How combos work, how you can find different routes for combos, different routes for your offense that aren't combos, different things for your defense. There's just so many options. It feels very nice, but it is a heavier feeling game. And I was telling people this. It gets a lot faster as you play the game more, but it's a very heavy feeling game. And it was the same criticism / concern I had with Street Fighter 6 when I first played it. And it was like, man, this game feels heavy, but it gets quicker, right? It definitely gets quicker. I love the art style. I love it. I love it. I feel some characters are clunkier than others, and some just seem like insanely overtuned. Like Kine feels insanely overtuned, and Fox just sort of like mash jab at almost any opportunity and confirm into huge damage. Like, what the hell? Like, off of a couple, 3 jabs, they confirm into some launcher that goes into EX launcher, and not everybody gets that. Like, it's kind of super difficult for like Rock and Terry especially to hit confirm off of some lights and go into a launcher. It's pretty difficult to do. Terry, I definitely tried, and it was a bit of a struggle. It was a bit of like, this is way more difficult, and Terry just doesn't get as many opportunities as some of the other characters, which I think is changing, as we were saying earlier, from previous versions where Terry seemed damn good. He did not feel this slow in the older builds of the game I played from a long time ago. He felt very good. And it was Rock that felt a little undertuned in those versions. Now Rock feels hella good, and Terry's a little like undertuned, but we'll see, you know. But let's talk about the beta and what's going on in this beta. So unfortunately, there's a caveat to this, so don't worry. Right now, it feels like the game is very much sitting alongside KOF 15. Let's talk about specifically Netcode, and it is rollback Netcode, but is it like premium Street Fighter 6 rollback Netcode? No, it is not. I've run into a lot of good matches that are shockingly functional and shockingly good, but several of them that are either catfish connections or are just stuttery as hell, where it's like, oh, our MS is very low. It's like 70 MS, but dude, the rollback frames are just constantly jumping up to 6, like all the time. And I'm like, woof, dude, this is weird. That sort of became exacerbated when I started to take the connections and put them in different places, where I was like, okay, 3 or 4 bars only. Even in those situations, I would get just as many bad games, like rough games with a lot of stuttering, and it's like, whoa, what's happening to the game right now, dude? And that's unfortunate, because it was the same thing happening when I was under anybody. Like, give me anybody. I was running into folks like literally in Europe, and it was running fine. It was obviously like a little stuttery, but it was consistent and not that delayed. And I can't say the same for even people that seemingly were close. It was just running like butt, dude. I'm like, yeesh. Like, some of these players seem really good. And as an example, I'm seeing like people are short hopping. I'm missing the first like 6 frames of their short hop. So they're just like here and then in the air and then short hopping the crap out of me. But on the end, that person's like mad good. And whenever I try to do it to them, they instantly anti-air me. And I'm like, I really wonder if this is happening on their end. In the same vein, I ran into like Nemo, right? Like legendary friggin' player, and he was on like a 30 to 40 game win streak, and I beat him in a set, and he immediately like quit out. And I'm wondering if it was the same thing on that end. Like, I cannot be confident in saying I outskilled this dude. It sort of feels like maybe on their end it was all fucking weird and kind of funky. I don't know. The netcode is like serviceable. It can work well, but it definitely needs some tuning, and it feels like some weird ass one-sided rollback bullshit could possibly be kicking in. But we don't have enough from like 2 days. I have like 200 matches. The thing that's obviously the problem that everyone's complaining about is the matchmaking. Right now, the matchmaking's working a lot better than it did in day 1. You're getting matches, but we still have a ton of people that are playing, like a shit ton, and it's cross-play, so there's 3 different platforms involved and nobody's there. Like, knock knock, it would take upwards of like a minute to 2 minutes to sometimes find a match. It's like, shit, what the hell's going on? The matchmaking is weird, and we try to figure out what's going on. Again, opening up the parameters, constricting the parameters, did the same shit. Pretty much give me a set group of people, but it would take just as long to find those people, upwards of like 30 to 60 seconds, where I'm like, dude, I know people are out there. This shit should be matchmaking me, like, fast. And for some reason, the matchmaking is insanely slow. There's another game that had this exact same problem, and it was KOF 15. And in KOF 15, it would matchmake you and take forever, even though people were looking, and then eventually find somebody, and it would be like the same person with like a bad connection over and over again. And it was like, what the hell's going on here? It was ultimately the thing that got myself and many others to stop playing KOF 15, just because finding matches was brutal. So that is not entirely happening here. It was kind of happening in the first day, but they fixed some shit. The bigger issue overall is that you spend too much goddamn time waiting. And yeah, in this beta, we don't have like training room waiting or our versus CPU waiting or anything like that, which I think is going to be there in the final game. You know, matchmaking's a bit weird, is all we'll say. It needs to match people faster. Oh, huge gripe. All of the menus in the game are terrible. And I don't mean they look terrible, they're functionally terrible. Like moving around a menu or selecting your SPG has so much like input delay that I'm like, whoa, dude, what? It gives you like a bad impression of how the game feels. And when you're moving around menus and it just feels so bad, I'm like, whoa, dude. It feels like I'm using a DirecTV from like 2004. I'm like, what was happening? So I hope that changes. And one big criticism, in between rounds, the game fades to black, and in between games, it fades to black. And it's either loading something or doing something, but sometimes it could take a long time. Sometimes I'm like fighting somebody and it's between round 1, 2, or 2 and 3, and it fades to black and we're just like, oh, okay, round 3. And it's little things like that. It isn't the end of the world, we're playing, but you're just sitting there looking at a black screen and wondering, I'm like, did my game crash? It didn't. And then you start fighting the guy. You're like, okay. So that's a gripe. The good news is that the rooms seem very good. From what we've played so far, from actual room play, getting people in, there's like a host mode, there's like a streamer mode where the streamer stays on one cabinet if you want. All the other matches are happening simultaneously in the room, so it's super functional and like kind of awesome. To me, the best way to get games quick is to open up a room if you can and get those people in as soon as possible. There's much less waiting that's involved with that shit. So that's a good thing. Ultimately speaking, we got a fun game, you know, that has a lot of cool nuance and all this stuff. However, in this current state, it is kind of the epitome of like an SNK online experience from the previous ones, although a little bit better than KOF 15. Once I started getting into the higher ranks, I started noticing a lot more netcode issues when people are actually like good at the game and they're utilizing short hops and moving forward. I'm like, wow, my opponent can teleport. Like, this is very hard to deal with. So that became much more apparent at higher ranks. But good news, I think Oda-san and folks at SNK, because of some of the criticisms of this beta, were saying that, hey, we're most likely going to be holding another beta that is going to have some of the fixes of the functionality that is present in this version of the game, which is wonderful news. It means that SNK is actually listening. For the longest time, it felt like all of the qualms we had were falling on deaf ears when it came to the matchmaking of KOF 15, and then that eventually got fixed like a year and a half later. So this doesn't seem to be that situation. It seems that, okay, they want to tackle this before it's out. They don't got much time, but there's a chance that there might be another beta beyond this one, and we're only halfway through this one right now. So that's good news, right? It's good news. And, you know, I do encourage you guys to try this. If you can, this is an open beta. Give it a shot to see what it's like. It's on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. I don't know about the PC version. I'm kind of wondering if some of my issues present are with the PC version of the game. Maybe acting a little funky, but I've been hearing that the PlayStation 5 version runs pretty good. I might want to check out the console version just to see what it's like. And yeah, right now, I'm most likely going to be playing Rock. Rock is very good. He's very fun. I'm having a great time with him, dude. And there's all this cool optimization to him. I'm having a wonderful time. Terry, not so much. Unless Terry goes through some pretty big changes by the time the game comes out. I'll probably just play him for funsies, you know, but like wanting to get stuff done against some of the better characters in the game and the better players that are out there. Oh man, I'm like, this is frustrating. I'm getting rolled over here, dude. Terry needs to pull out a gun when he's eventually in Fortnite.